I think we're good to go.
Is it on there? Okay. Yeah, go to it.
All right.
All right, let me get the notes up.
So go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you all for coming. It really is really incredible to see so many people here because just a year ago, not even a year ago, a semester ago, we started this club back from the ashes, launched Hack UTA, and now we're hosting workshops. So it's very cool to see. So I'm Ryan. I'm the president of the ACM, also last year's director for Hack UTA. I'm joined by Huai, who is our director for this Educate and series. Also joined by our VP, Ethan, joined by one of our officers, Alfredo, joined by Bobby, our marketing officer, and then Tuan, also in Educate. And then there's also Trevor, who is the new director for Hack UTA. So if you have any questions throughout the event, feel free to raise your hand, and then one of them will go up to you and try to help. But yeah, so to begin with this workshop, after this event, we're going to be posting notes. Actually, we should post notes now. Could you post that, Ethan? Sure. Okay, we're going to be posting it in the announcements channel for now. We'll be moving it to a different channel later. But in these notes, you can find everything we'll be covering. They're adapted from UCLA's notes, so they're pretty similar and they're pretty thorough and good. Yeah, and there's no installation required for this series, so everything should be quick, intuitive, and easy. So yeah, to begin, we're not going to be using VS Code or Git in this. That'll be covered probably towards the middle half of the series because we don't want to get too complicated just yet. We kind of just want to cover the fundamentals of web development. So to begin, we're going to be using a virtual independent development environment, an IDE, and it's called Code Sandbox. So if you guys can, go to codesandbox.io. There is no sign up required, nothing. All you have to do is go to the website, and on the top right, there's a try for free button. In about a minute, we'll move on from there, but if everyone could go to that real quickly.
Make sure everyone's situated for that.
Yeah. If anyone's having trouble, raise your hand, and we'll try to fix that. You're able to send it? The notes? Okay.
Oh, I tossed it. Where do I toss it? Oh. Where should they go? In general? Yeah, but it's just an educator.
No, you should just put in announcements for now.
Announcements?
Yeah. All right, so while you guys are doing that, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we're going to be covering for this workshop. It shouldn't be over an hour. It might dwindle over by a tiny bit. But for this workshop, we're going to be covering HTML and CSS. In the next few, we're also going to be going deeper into CSS. But for this one, we kind of just want to get you situated with how websites work and like how it's structured. So basically, we're going to be covering what HTML and CSS is used for, some basic HTML tags so you can get the semantics of it, some basic property tags such as like linking to a website or anchoring an element. We're going to be covering how to use CSS to style things. And then we're going to be discussing a potential project that you guys could do. So it's going to be on our notes. We have a project. It's optional. You guys don't have to do it. We don't have enough time for it. So yeah, so hopefully you guys are already all here. If you can, click try for free. On try for free, you're going to be prompted with a variety of different language dialects, stuff that you can use, frameworks. For now, we're going to be using vanilla. So go to vanilla. Don't click on any of the other scary options, just vanilla. It has a yellow box with JS. That's JavaScript. You should be situated with a kind of complicated interface right here, but it's really intuitive, and it has like 3 different section components for this development environment. You have over here your file tree. This is where all of your files are located. If you guys have ever touched a computer before and opened up File Explorer, you guys should know what this looks like. In the middle, this is where you code. It looks pretty. And then this is the actual web page that you are rendering here. So whatever you write here, it's interpreted and then rendered on this screen. So the good thing about using codesandbox.io is that it will render it automatically. So you don't have to worry about going into a .html file and reloading it, hitting the reload button. It does it automatically for you. So yeah, I'll let Huai begin now.
All right, so first thing is, well, what is HTML? HTML is simply, it stands for a hypertext markup language, and it's used for general layout of web pages like this. So, I mean, we can look over here real quick.
Yeah, okay. So HTML, it may seem very complicated. It's hypertext markup language. Personally, I don't even know what it means. I barely understand it. But for the most part, it is interpreted, it is declarative, and it's tree structured. We'll get more into what that means in a tiny bit. But essentially, it's saying that what you write is being interpreted to code. So you don't write the low-level code. It's declarative. What you declare is what you kind of get. It's kind of more complicated than that, but layman's way. And it's tree structured. So if you guys have taken algorithms, taken theoretical, you'll kind of understand how trees work. But it's kind of the same way in the way that you indent your code, which indicates the tier of the tree it's in, the hierarchy of it in a way. So real quickly, you guys might have, like in elementary school, gone through a really cool thing called right-clicking on the page and then clicking inspect element. It's a very cool way to do hacker stuff, right? It's if you go over there, yeah. If you see it, you kind of see a complicated type of interface right there, this layout. In reality, all you're seeing is 3 different components here. One of them is hidden, but you see the HTML. Some of these have what you call CSS. It's inline, so there are 2 ways to write CSS. We'll cover that in a bit. But you can also see the console, which is where, over there, this is where JavaScript, you can actually code in your console. So if you guys have used any command line interface, it's like that. But this is where you can actually execute JavaScript. So in this inspect element interface, you can do all 3 of those things. You can interact, read, interface with the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. There's also a cool feature where if you click over here, no, the other one, this one? No, the mobile one. You can actually render your page like a mobile device. So if you click that top button, but we won't touch that too much right now. So if you could exit out of it, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what it is. You saw somewhat of how the hierarchy worked when you inspected the page, and etc. So now we'll kind of get into what does this all over here mean. So actually, we can delete most of it. So like,
Yeah, I'll just delete this one.
delete like everything but the doc type.
Oh,
So
everything? Okay.
yeah, so this file right now that you are editing in is called index.html. You can name the file anything you want .html, but per standard, you normally name the landing page index.html. What HTML contains is code that are called documents, and in a way, in the way that you're reading the file is the same way that like it's marked down. So it sounds kind of complicated, but HTML is a XML type of language, which is similar to Markdown, which just means that everything is kind of tag based. So HTML isn't necessarily a coding language, it's more of a Markdown language. So it's like closer to writing notes than it is to writing code, but it's kind of in between. So this first thing is called a tag, right? You can see that it begins and ends with a brace, an angled brace. And the first thing that you normally want in your .html documents is to declare that it's HTML. So what you type is a form of idiom, and it's angle brackets and begins with an exclamation mark. In all caps, doc type, then HTML. And it's the type of thing that you just memorize. Every web page will have this. It's at the very top. It just indicates that the file is a HTML file. Seems very boring, but after that, we kind of get into the brunt of everything. So then we begin with HTML brackets. This indicates where the HTML is now beginning. Every tag, as they call it, has a beginning and an ending. And to end it, it's the exact same thing as the beginning, but with a slash right there. Can we make the screen bigger? Yeah. So every tag begins just with angle braces, the name of it, and then it ends, but it has a slash in front of it. So it's very, very simple if you want to create elements. But the very base after you write your doc type HTML is you have your HTML tags. After that, there are 2 more components. We have the head and we have the body. That's really it. This is the base of any HTML document. You have the HTML, you have the head, then you have the body. The head will contain stuff that is more meta related. So it's kind of the logic. You don't really see it too much. That's where you can control stuff like in your Chrome tab, you can see the title of the page. You can see an icon. There's meta tags where like whenever you send a link to somebody, it has metadata. That's all normally located inside of the head. Inside of the body is where you actually see the content that you kind of structurize with HTML. Any questions so far? It's kind of complicated, but
Mostly images.
yes.
Does indentation matter?
No, you do not need to indent, but it is way prettier. It kind of
Why
helps you
would you say
structurize. You should always indent though.
Now you're making me do this.
Yeah, it looks ugly when you don't indent though. Yeah. So please indent your files. You kind of indent after every time you start a tag. So every time you start, you indent the next line. And you keep doing that. Whenever you end a tag, after that, you unindent. So it's kind of like that. So yeah, for now, that's kind of the gist of it. As you can see, can we actually, let me go over here. So you can kind of see your file tree over there. I'm going to explain this part real quickly. This source folder, you can name it anything really, but it's just saying like this is where all of your files are located, your kind of contents. But outside of it, you can see your index.html. So we're going to get into these two files later, JavaScript at a later lecture. But for now, we're going to be continue touching index.html, just HTML in general. So real quickly to kind of illustrate what does HTML do. You may think that it's what you can see, but it's kind of more complicated than that. HTML is more of the skeleton and structure of a language than it is kind of a visualization part of the language. CSS, which stands for cascading style sheets, which we will touch in a second, is what you kind of see from it all. So if you want to think of it metaphorically, HTML is like a skeleton, while CSS is like the actual skin and the parts that you can see and feel and touch. JavaScript, which we'll cover later on in a different lecture, not lecture, workshop, is more of the brains behind everything. But yeah. So what we can do now is we're going to be kind of covering different semantical tags that you will see common. Actually, first, what we're going to do is you can name these tags anything. So it doesn't have to have an actual name. You could actually have brackets with nothing in them. You can name it anything. You could have nothing. Those are all correct and logical. However, comma, they are not practical for anybody to read. It doesn't help anyone to see this is amazing, exclamation mark, as a tag. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't convey an actual structure or meaning to the language. So that's why there is a kind of semantical structure where common types and fundamental elements of web pages have a kind of standardized name to it. So that's why we have head, body. What is it? Your browser will actually know how to interpret that as per the HTML standard to kind of understand what does head mean, what does body mean. So I guess the first element that we will touch is H1 or heading. So whenever you see a web page, you might see a title, right? Now you could wrap those in tags that are named anything, but the semantical structure is H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. They all stand for heading 1 through 6. And the higher the number goes, the smaller it is. So we'll kind of visualize how it is a bit. So as you can see, your browser automatically knows that because it's an H1 tag, it's going to be massive. It is the grand title. But when you move to H2, it kind of gets smaller because your browser knows that it's a subtitle. When you move to H3, now it's getting even smaller. And it kind of continues going down that line in a logical way. But that's basically your browser knowing that in the standardized way as defined per the HTML standard, the higher the number is on an H tag, so H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and heading tag, it will continue to get smaller. So I don't know if you guys can kind of see where I'm illustrating this. Basically, it's a stylized semantic for all of this, but yeah, those are heading tags. Now you're starting to actually code. So the next thing is, now that you have headings, you need content. And the best way to show content is, there's no such thing as H7.
There is no H7.
The H7 doesn't exist. It goes through 1 through 6. You don't need to memorize these at all. You just need to know that H stands for heading. And if you ever want a heading, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Right? The next thing is you want content. And the best way to store content is with paragraph tags. Paragraph tags are indicated with P. P means paragraph. And that's just generally any type of text that you want to use. So if you ever want to write content, once again, you can store it in a tag named absolutely anything. But the semantical way to do it is to use P, and P means paragraph, and your browser will automatically kind of understand it. And we're going to get into more why you want to make it easier for people to understand when we get into styling, when you're trying to actually stylize these elements. So yeah, now you have, don't use H7, use this instead in a paragraph tag. The next thing is called a span tag. And span tags, I don't know if you guys have ever covered what wrappers are, but it's a kind of way to embody and wrap an element. It spans an element. So yeah, so it's kind of another semantical way to do stuff. You can wrap it around stuff, which we'll get to in a second. You can kind of see how you can wrap stuff. So he's wrapping a span tag with a p tag, which is kind of weird. It's this is kind of foreign, but yeah. So that's something that you probably won't see too much. You're probably gonna Stack Overflow it or Geeks for Geeks W3 it. You'll look it up at some point and you'll kind of understand it. The next part is, now that you have headings and content, you'll probably also at some point in time need to list information. And the best way to do that is through ordered lists and unordered lists. This structure in and of itself is kind of confusing for most people, because what you will actually do is you'll use, writing a comment. We'll cover comments in a tiny bit. Okay, so we're going to be doing first an unordered list. So if you use the tag UL for unordered list. Okay, Huai's writing some comments. Can you write a UL real quickly?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick unordered list, and this is just basically bullet points. There's no order to it. There's no number. There's no A, B, C, D. It's unordered. So in these unordered lists, you actually need to like wrap your content in a type of list. So you use LI, which stands for list. So it's kind of like a list item. So as you can see in an unordered list, he's able to type stuff and they come off as bullet points because it's, once again, unordered. But now let's say you want to order the list. You want a 1, 2, 3 type of situation instead of a just 3 bullet point situation. You can change the UL tag that you have to OL, which stands for ordered list. So we'll make another list below it. You might need to scroll down.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So you can kind of see over here, when you use ordered list, it makes an ordered list. So now we've covered headings. Those are your titles. We've kind of covered content, which are paragraphs. And we've covered lists, which are ordered lists, unordered lists, and lists. Lists, once again, are the items itself that you would wrap, that would be wrapped in ordered lists and unordered lists. But yeah, that's that. Now, another thing that is probably important is commenting your code. You want to make it easier for people to read. So this is probably the most foreign concept or kind of thing in HTML, because it's kind of going against the grain of normal standards. And that's whenever you want to write a comment, you actually continue to use the angle brackets. But in the first part of it, you use exclamation mark, and then you put 2 dashes. And to close it, you use 2 dashes and then the closing the bracket. So that's how you kind of write a comment. It's kind of different from writing hashtags for comments in Python or using 2 forward slashes for a C descending language. So as you can see, Huai is able to write comments in the IDE over here. And that's how you write comments. It's kind of weird, probably foreign. You won't remember it off the top of your head until you do it a few times. But that's kind of how you write comments and like know how to structure your code. Now, a thing in most IDEs, independent development environments, is if you want to comment code, you can actually select a line, click Control, and then slash. And that will automatically comment it out. So that's kind of a hotkey that you can normally use for stuff. It's very useful. But yeah. So those are kind of like the most popular, what is it called? Most popular tags and elements that you'll see. Now, we're going to kind of stray away from the semantics and kind of get into customizing information. So the most general type of element you will ever see is called a div. And divs are just, they stand for division, but they're kind of just elements that don't have a semantical name as per like an HTML standard, right? It's just a div. So yeah, so it's a div. In a way, think of it as a box around something. It's just, you don't know what it is. It doesn't have any color in it. You don't know if it's a box for a vacuum cleaner, a computer. It's just a very generalized element. We'll be touching those in a second, but okay, this is getting kind of complicated. Fine.
Yes.
Okay, let's we're gonna remove some of the stuff here so we can get into more stuff. Yeah. So yeah, the next thing is this is, I think, the second to last thing is that you will see almost often is when you go to a website and you see a hyperlink or a link to a web page, how would you kind of structurize that in HTML? It's not using JavaScript, it's not using CSS, but it's using an anchor tag, which it's kind of a really weird name. Why would you use anchor to symbolize a hyperlink to a web page? But it's called anchor. You symbolize it by using a. And essentially, anything wrapped around that is going to be the text you see. But to actually get to the URL, we have to use something called properties, which we'll get into a tiny bit. But as you can see, Huai is able to write right here, hello. But when you click on hello, it doesn't actually do anything because you haven't actually linked it to a web page. So now begins the very interesting part of HTML called properties. So with this entire thing, this structure, as you can see, in a way, it's kind of like a tree, a hierarchy, where the entire thing over here is wrapped with HTML. And you have stuff inside of that. You have a head, you have a body. Inside of body, you have unordered lists, you have a division, you have ordered lists. They're kind of all becoming more and more nested into each other. And that's kind of the tree structure you see in HTML. But now there are actually more you can do to elements, and that's once again called properties, and that's inside of the element itself. So in the beginning tag, you can actually have properties included, and they're denoted by a name, equals, and then normal double quotes. So for anchor tags, we actually use href. So that stands for a hypertext reference, so href. And anything you put inside of that, it's actually going to be the link to the website or to the URL you go to. So if we want to go to, let's say, acm.uta.edu, we could go to that, and we just put that inside of that property. So once again,
Nice.
inside of that first element, the opening element, you can have any type of property you want.
That's not supposed to happen.
Properties begin with a name, they have an equal, and then you have two pairs of double quotations. And anything inside of that will be what the property contains. So yeah, so once again, you also have to put the protocol. So HTTPS, PS. Yeah, and that's right. Okay, now if you click on the link hello, it will go to it. And that's our website for now. So the next thing is in Code Sandbox, whenever you click on a link, it's actually not going to send you to a new page. It will typically replace the page you have with the link you clicked on. So another tag that you will commonly see in anchor tags is something called target. So if you add a target property real quickly, target is normally, this is an idiom that you just have to memorize when messing with HTML. But if you want to send it to a new page, you send it to _blank. And now when you click the link, of course, in Code Sandbox, it's going to automatically send you to a new page. Clicking on that will send you to a new page, and it won't replace the page you're currently on with that. So that's properties kind of being seen with an anchor tag, which is a hyperlink. The next part of it is kind of getting to the juicy part where you're starting to actually visualize and see more information. And that's with images. How do you actually include images into your code? How do you display images? Now, the most intuitive thought will probably be, oh, I use an image tag. But it's not named image, it's named img. So using img as a tag, that's how you kind of denote an image. But kind of getting the information is more interesting here. So once again, we're going to be using properties to actually tell where this information is from. So first, let's get an image. So if we go to Google Images real quickly, actually just go to the ACM website and just pick something off there. Sure, or pick our logo. Yeah. So if you right click it, you can copy image address. Yep. Go back to the website. So we can use the tag called src. That stands for source. And that's the source of where the image is. It's just kind of a property inherent to an image element. But if you put that inside of the property, so using src equal double quote, that link and double quote, then whenever it loads and renders the element on the page, you can actually see the image. So it renders it like that. You can have these URLs pointing to a website. You can have it pointing to somewhere inside of your file system. You can do anything with it, but it's just generally a source of the images where that name for source is derived from. Another thing that we probably won't cover until a later one is whenever you're designing sites, you kind of want it to be accessible and friendly for people who might have a screen reader and stuff. So another thing, another property you can have in these tags is called alt, and that's just for alternate text. We won't cover that too much here, but that's kind of how it goes. Any questions so far? Getting kind of complicated. Is it kind of making sense? Do you guys kind of see where it's going? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
A few things that also I haven't explained, probably should have, is as Kushi earlier asked, you can have infinite white space. This is not like Python where the amount of white space actually depends. It's just fully for how you kind of look at it and make it look pretty. So another thing that also doesn't care about white space is properties. So it's kind of trailing off the page here. But all he did is do a new line, and it's still inside of this first tag where you can see these two braces over here. It's still inside of it, it's just on a new line, and it makes it easier to read. So you can kind of see it better, because in the end, HTML is made to kind of be more intuitive for the user to code. It's a markup language. So yeah, another thing that's really interesting and gets even more complicated is you use two tags to denote an element, the beginning and the end. You can also do it in one. So if we want to do a image again, we can actually remove that last image tag over here, but move the slash inside and in front of that angle bracket. So we're able to move, this is also only for like some elements. You can't do it for paragraphs per se, because you want to wrap content around with those tags. So put the information in the middle. So for an image, you don't really want to put words in there because it's an image. So you can wrap it and have a just single tag, and it's ended with a slash before the end angle bracket. So it's kind of merging the beginning and ending all into one. So that's kind of how images work. It's kind of interesting, kind of weird. But yeah, the next thing is, or actually, that's pretty much all of HTML. That's the entire language to kind of a T. Now, there's more like specific and interesting parts about HTML. There are more syntactical meanings and definitions you can use. There are more common idioms. There are hundreds and thousands of properties that you can find on like Mozilla documents, the Mozilla Developer Network, which is probably the best place if you ever want to Google something about coding front end. Fantastic resource. But this is pretty much the entire thing. HTML is just it's just a bunch of tags wrapping stuff around and having properties inside of those tags that give it more information. But yeah, that's the entire language. That's HTML. It's very simple. It defines a skeleton structure of a web page. But as you can see, it doesn't look pretty at all. It's ugly. It's just what? It's Times New Roman or Arial font. It has just all black on a white page. It's boring. So this is where we get into CSS. And CSS is, since we're cascading style sheets, it just means style sheets in the end. It's kind of a sheet or a kind of file like this that has some definitions that will say, oh, this is how I want this to look. So to actually get CSS working, we have to link it. And that's where we use a link element. And for the first time now, we're going to be using the head tag. So the body tag, once again, is used to store the actual content. The head tag is used to actually put more meta, like stuff that doesn't have to do with what you see, but more of what happens. So in the head is always, whenever a web page is rendered, it generally renders the head first, because that's where you actually store the linking to the style sheets, because the style sheets are another file. It's kind of hard to explain, so we'll kind of just do a proof by example. So we can use a link tag, which is actually, let me show you. It's kind of this is something that you'll probably never memorize. It's very, very annoying to memorize. But we're able to use a link tag and do you know? Okay. I think it's source. Use src. So we'll use. Is that right?
I think it's href.
Oh, it's href. Okay. So we're going to be using a hypertext reference. So just a reference to our file system denoted by /, which means current directory. We're going into the source directory, so src/, which is over here where the other files are located. And then we're going to type in styles.css. So once you do that, that kind of links the style sheet to the document. So you have a link element. It's all in one. It's an inline element. it's pointing to your file system and the file that is inside of that like directory. And that's how you kind of link it together. Oh, give me 1 second. Does anybody have any questions so far? Have I gone too fast? Yes.
So you had a question to what is target again?
Say again?
Target.
Oh, so Target is used for linking websites or like linking links. So it uses the anchor tag. Target just means that instead of opening the link in the current page, it opens it in the new page. This sandbox right here is going to load it into a new page because it doesn't want you to lose your code. But typically, if you were to run that, it would replace your current screen with that website. The target = blank will target it to a new web page, a new window. Yes, Kushi?
We can define our own tags, right?
Yes, you can, yeah.
So we can define them, like we can make them do whatever we want.
Yeah, you can make your tags name whatever you want. There's no limit to it per se. It's just that it's better to stick by semantics so more people can understand it. But whenever we get to languages like React, you kind of see more of like the defining your own language type of beat, right? So yeah, so to link a style sheet, right? We use the link tag. We use href = wherever our style sheet is. So in this case, it is /styles.src/styles.scss. The kind of format and semantics that you'll see for style sheets is to name it styles.css. That's just kind of like the structure of it. The type, we want to let the computer know how to interpret this. So we use type = text/CSS.
Oh, you can do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, you want to, You want to give it another property named rel. And that rel is just kind of telling it what it is more so. In this case, it's a style sheet. So these three properties together in a link tag will link all the CSS, the CSS to your web page. Is that correct?
Yes,
So far.
but
It's not
I
working?
don't think this is necessary.
Oh, yeah, type isn't necessary. You just need the rel style sheet. So yeah. Why isn't it displaying on there?
I have no idea.
Oh, that's interesting. Is it
Okay, there.
okay, it was just invalid. Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So any questions on linking style sheets? This is kind of getting more complicated now. Oh, yes. Can you say it again? The link tag? Okay, so the link tag is just, once again, it's a kind of stylized semantic in the HTML standard. And it just means kind of linking a resource to this resource. So if we want to link CSS to HTML, we use the link tag to link it. And if you want to link CSS, it generally has the minimum requirement of 2 properties, and that's href and rel. Rel says what it's actually trying to read, which is a style sheet, and href points to the file location. So we're pointing to the style sheet, so the styles.CSS, and we're saying it's a style sheet. All right? Does that answer your question? Yes, no? Oh, perfect. Okay. So yeah. So as you can see, nothing really happened too much. However, if we go to styles.css, oh, your code messed up. Just remove it.
That's so weird. Why would it do that?
You can't. Oh,
That's annoying.
why is it breaking?
I don't know.
Oh, what's happening? Okay. Any other questions while I fixes it? Oh, maybe click the reload button. That's interesting.
Yeah, because there's nothing syntactically wrong
Okay.
there.
So okay, now if you want to go navigate to your styles.css thing, now we're going to be getting into how style sheets work, and this is where it gets probably twice as complicated. So in here, we've kind of taught you how tags work, how each tag can have a name. Now we're going to be showing you why you want to name it kind of well and not in a weird way. So as you can see, the kind of structure that you use to style CSS is, once again, against the grain completely. It's not like HTML. It's not like C, JavaScript, Java, Python. It's not like any of that. The way it works is, let's just clear everything here. The way it works is you have the name of what you're trying to select. So in this case, let's say we want to select body. So we can type in body. and then you wrap it with 2 curly braces. So once you do that, that's the entire thing. That kind of just says that I want to select this, and then I'm going to do this. So inside of this is getting into like more weird syntax, but it's styled as if it's like a, it's styled in object notation or like JavaScript object notation. It's kind of like that in a way. So the way it works is you have a property name. So if we can just type property name, it won't do anything. It might break the web page, but it's a property name, colon, value, semicolon. And that's how you name each property inside of, what is it, in a CSS tag. So, so the way this is kind of styled is like the word body here, it's called a selector. Inside of everything are called properties. And then everything after the colon are called values. So that's kind of how you structure it. Once again, white space doesn't matter at all in this. You can have infinite, but it's better to make it more readable. And once again, this is the kind of part of web dev where it's very memorization based. There's a lot of information, a lot of semantics that you just kind of got to know. So let's say we want to do stuff now with our body. So as you can see, the color of the text is black, right? What if we don't want to color it black? We can define the property color, colon, and then let's say we want to give it a color. Let's say we want to give it dark magenta. Why not? Or dark blue. Let's go for dark blue. So we can do color space dark blue semicolon. Oh, yeah, I didn't know.
What? Oh no.
Yeah, you can do that, and it makes the thing blue. Let's say you want to make the text size or the font size bigger. You can use font size. Oh, type in font size, font dash size, colon. Let's this is okay. This gets more complicated, but there are a variety of units as you can see on the screen right now. So many. For now, we'll use the unit pixels. So let's say we want to make it 30 pixels, right? So if we write 30 px, it'll show in 30 pixels. So it's just kind of bigger. Typically, for future reference, you'll almost never use px. Px is kind of bad whenever you're moving between a mobile device or a or like a desktop device. It doesn't scale very well. You might have very wide monitors. You might have very thin monitors. So in general, you probably will never use pixels, but for now, we'll kind of just use pixels because it's kind of more intuitive to understand. So yeah, so now you kind of can see that there's kind of 3 components to CSS when you are coding with it, and that is you have a selector, you have inside of that, you have curly braces, and inside of that you can have property names, each with a value. So now that we've shown you an element selector, there are actually more selectors you can do. So if we go back to index.html, you can see that there are all the element names there. You can select anything. You can select HTML. You can select body, ordered list, unordered list, list, image, anchor, body, etc. Right? You can select all of that. But there are alternate ways to select it, and those are called IDs and classes. So the way it works is kind of like a property that you would see in HTML, where you would have like src equal something, right? But instead of that, it's just ID equal. That's how you do IDs. You just write that. So you can write, let's write first. Let's just write first. Yeah, the word first here. So now this paragraph at the very bottom, it's so mean, Ryan, has an ID of first. Let's say we want to give 2 elements in this list. Let's say we want to give it a class of first 2, right? So we're going to give both of these, or actually, let's show it in the order list over here. Yeah, let's move it up to order list. So over here, we have an ID. Over here, we have a class. They're kind of similar, kind of different. It just depends on the kind of syntactical way that everything is kind of standardized. It's a very standardized process. So, so now that we have that, we can go to styles of CSS, and we can show you how to select elements with classes and with IDs. So before we even touch that, just to kind of explain what the difference between IDs, element selectors, and classes are, is classes are used more by CSS. IDs are used more with JavaScript. They kind of do the same thing. It's just in the way that it's used, it's kind of semantical to do it that way. So you could, of course, use IDs like you use classes. It's kind of a sin, but you can still do it. So what we can do to select classes is we can use dots. So actually, let me see if I can even remember this. Yeah, so if you want to select classes, we use dot. So we use period, and we use the name of that class. So the name of the class that we had for the ordered list over here was first two. We can do the same thing that we did with element selectors and wrap it around using curly braces, and then we can give it properties. So let's say we want to make the background color for this. What are we choosing?
I have no idea.
Green.
Green.
Aqua, or yeah, let's do green. Yeah.
Nice.
So if you do that, this is also kind of touching the tree hierarchy of everything too now. So if we go back to HTML or the HTML file here, you can see that because this class was given to the very top and what was wrapping around 3 list elements, everything that applied to class applies to its children. They're called child elements. They are children to this parent element. So everything that the parent has, the child has, if it kind of makes sense. So in a way, if you want to visualize it like a CS nerd, it's like a tree. Whatever the root node has, anything descending from it will have the same thing. So that's kind of how classes work. If we want to work with IDs now, so if we go back to the styles sheet, the way IDs work is instead of using a period, it uses a hashtag. You can kind of think of IDs are normally numerical. So hashtag is like the number symbol. So that's kind of how you do it. So if you do hashtag first, which is what we named our bottom paragraph over there, then you can stylize stuff that are denoted by IDs as properties. So we're doing background color. Let's make it, what's a gold? We'll make it gold, right? Okay. So we have that. And also to real quickly explain this property over here, background color or anything with a color, built into the language itself, it has like default names. So there's aquamarine all the way to like dark red. There's a variety of default colors, but you could also use hex codes. So if we go back, we could use hex codes for this. So if we want to do like hashtag ABC123, for sure, yeah, we'll do that. So you can also stylize it with hex tags. You can also do it with RGB. So if you remember the hashtag, yep. Oh, hashtag, yep. You can do RGB and just individualize individualize the component. So 1022. So that's kind of how it works if you want to do colors. Just thought I would mention that. So yeah, that's kind of the general structure of CSS. We're going to real quickly cover just some very common properties. Yes, Ahmed? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we're going to give just like some very common properties that you would see using CSS. One that we've already covered is font size. I don't know why it's not called text size, but it's called font size. That's how you make text bigger or smaller. Font weight is how you make stuff bold. So if we want to give that very bottom text, we want to make it bold, we can do font weight. Let's make it 800. So you can do 800 and it will make it bold. The entire structure of how that works is kind of more complicated. We won't get into it right now, but yeah. The next thing is background color and color. Color affects the text color. Background color affects the background color. It's very cool how that's named. But yeah, those both work with the same type of ways you can kind of input colored values. So you can use hex, RGB, HSL. That's a weird one. Or you can just use named colors like we have already. The next thing is kind of getting more interesting. Let's say we want to make a border around an element. To make a border, we can just type in border.
Let me do this. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do a border around our ordered list. So if we type, I spelled border wrong. If we do border, just border, normal border, you can type in the radius. So let's just type in 30 px. Will that work? Actually, I forgot how to use borders, not gonna lie.
Okay, I think it's something.
Oh.
Okay, well, that's the.
I think border does everything, yeah.
Does it?
Yeah. I kind of forgot, but you can look it up.
Size, like style, and color. I think like pixels, solid black.
Oh, okay. So 30 solid black.
No comments?
No comments with spaces. No, space black. Will this work? Okay, so the way that borders work, it's just kind of a concatenated way of writing properties. There are some like very common properties that where you can move it left, right, up, down, or it has like different elements to the same type of property. You can actually write that all out at once. So in border, it's kind of showing that the first value given is the size. The next one is kind of the style part of the line. So we can do solid, we can also do dashed. The next part is the color of it. So that's kind of how you do that. But we can also write it individually. So we can do border dash size, or we can remove all of that. Yep. So we can do border dash size. We can do 30px.
Is it really size?
Isn't it border size? Am I capping? I might be capping here.
You are.
Okay.
I think it was really-
Oh, border radius. Shoot.
Oh,
Yeah.
but that curves it.
Something like that. Okay. But yeah, it's kind of component kind of. It's weird how it works, but you can kind of concatenate everything into a more simple type of property. It makes it a little more simpler. So you don't have to have massive things where you're just trying to do a border around a box like you would see in Excel. It makes it simpler. There's a lot of things as you can see. Yeah. So I guess now that we've kind of done a few of the basics here, we have covered, I guess CSS wise, we've covered 3 different selectors. You have element selectors, you have class selectors, you have ID selectors. We've covered how the way it's structured is the selector, you have the brackets, and then you have property value. It's a property value kind of I forgot how you call it. Yeah, it's just
Pair?
property value. Huh? Pair. Yeah, it's a property value pair. So if we go back to index, the index HTML, we've kind of covered how tags work, how they're named, the information you can put inside of it, the properties it can have. Some common properties that you will use a lot are class and ID. So now that we've kind of covered that, let's try to make something that's interesting. That more than that's whatever this is. This is very interesting. So let's try to make real quickly a portfolio, right? Kind of getting complicated. So the first thing that you kind of want in a portfolio is you want your name on there. So with the name, let's say, because it's the main part we're trying to attract, we use a header tag. So let's use H1. So inside of our body, we can put an H1 tag. We can write Huai Din, right?
Oh boy.
We're gonna be doing your resume site now. Do you have one?
No, I don't.
Fantastic, we're making one for you right now. Okay, now that we have his name, let's say we want to give more information about him, right? We want to give his degree. So it's kind of a sub-component of himself. It's in a way, so we're going to use an H2 tag. So let's say he is a, you're what is it,
I
are you
don't
undergrad?
know.
Wait,
Oh
are
my
you,
God.
no, you are undergrad, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he's majoring in computer science. So we can do, no, you're majoring in software engineering. Shoot. Okay. So yeah, we can give the name of what that is. We're going to say he's, the major is an H2 tag, and then the information itself is in a paragraph tag. So we put software engineering, right? Let's say we want to get a nice
Yeah.
picture of why, right?
The body is screwing us up.
Oh, yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and index. So now let's say we want to give him a picture of himself. So let's say we want to do it above his name. Or you want to do it below or above?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, we're gonna do a quick profile picture for the thing above so we can kind of see what he looks like, right? So we can do a just one tag for the image. I forgot what it's called semantically, but let's find a random image. Why not?
Why? When I could just
Do the ACM logo. Why not? Go back to
the ACM logo.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. The
You're-
link on this is ridiculous.
That's a-okay. Okay. Copy image address. Yep. Go back to it. And then we can give the source of the image itself. So we can put that there. It's kind of not the correct proportions, but now we have kind of an image for his profile. We have his name, major as information, and we're using a paragraph. Yes?
You have to like small the size of the image.
Yes, we'll touch that in a second with styling. You can't do that necessarily with HTML. Yes?
Also the spacing between two lines already
We'll do that in a second. That's all styling, making stuff bigger, smaller, wider, taller, less width between, more margin, more padding, stuff like that. That's all with CSS. So do you think that's enough?
That's it.
Let's link something, right? Let's link to what's something you want to link to, Hwai?
Memories.
Okay, you want to link to our website. You're a sellout, right? So yeah, we can add an anchor tag. We can give it a quick href property, and we can send that to https://acm.ut.edu. Just a link. Now let's say we want to target it to a new page so it doesn't overwrite this one. We can do a target equals _ blank. I'll send it to a new page, and then we can give inside of this anchor tag a name. So let's say check me out here. Sure, this is crazy. Okay, nice. So that's kind of like the structure. HTML is just kind of a skeleton structure. We have the structure now. Now we can actually kind of stylize it. So one more thing that we didn't cover inside of the actual, or like the first part of it, is that we can actually do something called inline CSS. So we don't have to have a new file. It's just better to do it because it's easier to read and manage. So just for one of the properties to make it simple, just to real quickly show it off, let's say in the anchor tag. No, let's make it software engineering. Software engineering, we can stylize it inline, which means inside of the same tag, with a property called style. It's very intuitive. So we can do style equals, and then we can have 2 double quotes. And then it's kind of the same way that you do CSS, but it's only the property value pair. You don't actually have to have a selector because it's already inside of the element. The element is already selected. So we can do color, colon, let's say we want to make a blue. We're going to do blue, and then you do semicolon still. And then it will actually stylize it. So you could do inline CSS. Typically, most people will recommend against it because it's very hard to read. So yeah, so we can remove all of that. Let's not do inline CSS. It's a sin.
Why introduce it?
I mean, it's just there. So when people see it. So if you go to styles now, we can actually start to make this look cool, right? So let's say the first thing we want to do is the image right now. It's too big. It's getting annoying. Let's try to select the image. So because the image is the only one on the screen, we can just use a straight up element selector, and we'll use image for this case. To change it in CSS, or not CSS, in like a document object model, which is kind of what HTML, CSS, everything is whenever you load it into your browser. The way it kind of works is when you resize one element, it resizes both, right? Am I tripping?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It resizes both, so you can have proportions or like the aspect ratio locked. You could also do it individually. So let's say we want to make the width 50%. Now, before you type 50%, you may think that it means 50% of the current size. But another type of unit in like CSS is percent, and percent is the percent of the container it is in. So in this case, because if we go back to HTML, in the HTML file, it's only wrapped. The parent element of it is just a body tag. So right now, the entire what is it? I can't speak right now. What did I say earlier? What is it in?
The image?
Yeah, the entire box that it's kind of in metaphorically is everything you kind of see. If we were to wrap that, let's say in a div, let's wrap the image in a div. So if we wrap this in a div real quickly, yeah, if we wrap this in a div, and let's give the div class the name of, let's just name it PFP. So div, and then we're going to do a class equal PFP. If we give it something and we wrap it around it, and if we go back to styles of CSS, let's say, before we even change the image, let's make a one for the PFP. So if we do .pfp to select the class itself, we can give it the style of, let's say we give this a width of 50%. So if we give it a width of 50%, that means half of this screen, or sorry, the size of that div component is going to take up half the screen. And in a way we can check this is by inspecting element again. So if we right click again, inspect element, and oh God, what happened? Oh,
Yes.
oh, can you, yeah. So if we use on the top left of that part, you see kind of a box with an arrow. generally it's always up there. That's called a selector. And we can just use that to kind of hover over each element and see more information about it. So one thing we'll cover in a second is stuff like padding, which is normally orange. Is it margin or padding? Margin. Margin is normally orange. So if we go to the image tag or what wraps it, you can kind of see left. Yeah, you can kind of see how whenever we had that div wrapping the image and we set it to 50%, you can kind of see now how the size of this element now is only 50%, and the blue is the element. So it takes up half the web page now. So this image is stuck in this box now that we have created for it. So now if we go back to, let's get out of inspect element. Let's say we want the image size to be 50% again. So now it's going to be 50% the size of the box it's in. So I guess if you do the math, 50% of 50% is 25% of the entire web page. So now it scales based on the width of your, of your page or like your screen right now. So as you can see, it's 50% of a box, it's 50% of the entire screen. So I hope that kind of illustrates how percents work. You can also work with something called viewport units, which is more what normal people use. And viewport units is kind of the entire size of everything. So your viewport is what you kind of see in your browser. It's 100 viewports width, 100 viewport height, and it's just kind of an even division of everything. So when you use viewport units, it kind of supersedes and it kind of ignores the fact of whatever it's in. So percents care about the box it's in. Viewport units do not care. So let's say we want to make the image 50 VW, which is for viewport width. It will now be 50% of the screen now because it only cares about how big your width is because it's in relation to your viewport. So that's width. Let's just make it for now. Let's make it 20. So the size of that element will now be 20. Let's say we want to center everything, right? So I guess we can kind of sin with this. Let's just select body. In body, we're going to be covering this next time, but if you just kind of, actually, let's not even touch it then. Later, next workshop, we're going to kind of be covering how we kind of order stuff and move it, centering something, putting it in grids, stuff like that. That's more towards next time, but I guess just to real quickly cover this portion of it, the last thing we'll be covering is kind of margins and padding. So now that you have some elements on your screen, you might want to add more space to the left, the right, the top, the bottom, etc. You might want to also decrease it. So let's say Huai wants to move his name, let's say 50% to the right. So your name is H1. Let's add a class to it. Class equal name. All right. And now if you select it using .name, yep. Now you can make, let's say, margin. You want to make the margin, actually, let's use margin top. So margin dash top. Let's say you want to make this 20%. So you want it to be 20% below where it is now. Let's say you want to add another one called margin left. Margin left, 20%. Right? That's kind of how you move elements around now. You can add margins to the left, top, bottom, down, etc. You can also combine this into one. And instead of using margin left and top, you can just use margin. So let's say we want to use margin 20%. So margin 20%, if you only include one value, it applies it to everything. Now, let's say you include another value. Let's make it 50%. When you do that, it's now going to apply the first value to the top, bottom, the second value to the left, right. Let's say you add two more values. Let's make it 30 and 70. I don't even know, just random numbers. It'll kind of add that. So it's now working on top, right, bottom, left. Works like that. Kind of interesting. You can find more information about it in documentation online. But that's kind of how you start stylizing and moving stuff around. Next workshop, we're going to kind of be covering and going more into how to actually format and move stuff around to where it's not just using margins to push stuff and information around. But I guess for now, so we don't run too late on time, this is kind of everything on just the basics of what is HTML, what is CSS, how HTML is the structure and kind of the skeleton of everything, and also how CSS is what you are kind of looking at. It gets way more complicated. You can get into stuff, as we're going to cover in the next one, positioning and trying to position stuff more effectively and actually get a structure and everything. But I hope this workshop kind of gave you an introduction and kind of basic understanding to where when you go to, uta.edu or google.com, you kind of understand that, oh, this entire web page, if I just open it and inspect element, I can kind of see every single element there. You can see everything, and you can see how the more indents you have, the more like into the, the more wrapped it is, the more into the tree it is. You can kind of see what is a parent of what is a child of what. You can kind of see here, there's some inline styling. All of that, it's the exact same thing as having a CSS file. So you can kind of understand how all of that works, how it looks, and see that when you make a web page, all the information is stored in HTML. All of what it looks like is written in CSS. And that's kind of how you make what we have as the fundamental of a web page. That's the fundamentals of like a web site and a web app and a web project. It's that. And of course, once again, you can get more complicated by getting into JavaScript, where you actually have the logic and kind of the brains of everything. So yeah, this is the structure of it. Cover HTML, CSS, cover tags, properties, selectors for CS, like everything. So kind of that's it for now. I hope it's not too complicated. Before I guess we wrap everything up, does anybody have any questions? I know it's kind of chaotic. Yes.
When will the next workshop be?
All of the workshops are going to be on Thursdays from 5 to 7 p.m. We're typically going to try to make it at most an hour, but the extra time is just overflow. If you guys have any questions or stuff like that. But the goal is to make everything kind of simple. But we can't, like, in a way, we also can't teach okay, sorry, I'm kind of getting away from your question here, but did I answer it?
Oh yeah, you did, and everything will be on the ACM Discord, right?
Yeah.
Announcements.
Yeah, we'll post everything on the Discord and all the communication resources. We'll also upload this to our YouTube video or YouTube channel afterwards. But yeah, and once again, we can't in workshops we can't exactly teach everything that is HTML, CSS. We can't fully teach how everything works. Because to learn web development, it is very trial and error. Like it is a lot of just trying it out, messing up a lot, going to Stack Overflow, and kind of just understanding how complicated and how stuff works through just trial and error. So one of the best resources that you could ever use is called MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. This is what makes Firefox. They made also cool languages like Rust, etc., stuff like that. But if you ever have a question or you ever want to know something about front-end web development, this is by far the best resource. If you want to learn web development in a more accelerated way, this is probably the best resource you can learn it from. This is by far like the core document that everybody would recommend. Like this is just, it is beautiful, the amount that you can learn from the MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. But yeah, there's not much that we can do about kind of getting understanding with how it works to a T, because there's a lot of small details that come with web development. But the best that we can do is kind of give a foundation to where, let's say if you try it again in the future, or you want to go to your software engineering class where you kind of make a project with the team, you can kind of understand how websites work and kind of have a fundamental start to building these. So next time when you go to a hackathon, next year Hack UTA, you can kind of understand how this all works, and you can maybe try to create a project. But if you guys stay throughout this entire series, we'll be able to get you guys to learn how to code in very popular frameworks like React. All of our notes once again are going to be online. We'll try to explain this in the most coherent sense. Sorry if this was kind of incoherent. I haven't slept in like 4 days as I've been like rushing around with tests. So we didn't have too much time to prepare for this one, but yeah. We'll try to do our best for next times. And if any of you guys stay for for 7 out of the 10 workshops, we will have like an actual special prize. We're dedicating an entire portion of our club's budget to just getting people to stick to these workshops and kind of continue understanding how this works so that they can learn more supplemental knowledge that isn't taught at university. That's our main goal here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry for rambling. I think I'm going crazy. That is it. Thank y'all.
Awesome. Now that Ryan's done, let's do something stupid. So this period of the time, there's nothing really informative. It's just a lot of experimentational stuff. Before this workshop, I was working with someone else, messing around with the different classes and IDs and stuff, and I've experienced or I've noticed some interesting behavior between the two. So if we check out the MDM docs, so let's see. We can look at class. So in class, it's noticed that, let's see here. So class is like a way to classify a lot of different tags. That way you can select a lot of them at once. And it allows you to select different tags. So back here, you could have done something like P to select all your paragraph tags, right? But if you didn't want to select all your paragraph tags, what you could do instead is give it some class. So like .name right here. And I can,
Speak louder.
I can go to like H2, give it the same name class, and it'll behave the same way. And it should update.
Name it main.
Bro. Okay. Name it main. It also updates and goes into the center as well. And then you can also give them both a class and an ID.
Sorry for taking the mic.
Nah, you're good. Let's get this.
You can try doing it next one. I forgot about that one.
So like multiple tags and multiple classes?
It was in the notes. I just forgot to cover it. I should have read the notes before.
That's good.
Or that was kind of chaotic. I forgot to read the docs, the notes beforehand.
I think without reading, you're pretty good. You didn't really prepare for that. I would have been sounding so bad if that was me.
I mean, I didn't know what to say.
Oh, we should end the recording.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you guys are recording this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Stop sharing. Or...